16 adult Colombian Tetra and a 120-gallon tank. Gravel vacuums of the substrate occasionally yield some eggs. It's nearly been 3 weeks since I first put this water that I vacuumed out of my 120-gallon tank and into this 10-gallon tank. And if you look in the corner, you can see one of the Colombian Tetra fry that has devoured brine shrimp nuclei. So he is a bit reddish in color. And if I turn on the filter, shortly he'll begin swimming against the current. There he goes. He's fighting the current to prevent being swept away. So as I've said, Colombian Tetra grow very slowly and are rather long-lived in comparison to other fish of comparable size. Guppies live about a year, maybe a year and a half at the outside, but Hyphessobrycon, columbianus probably live 5 or 6 years in ideal conditions. I recently did another water change in the 120 gallons, so I removed a little less than half of the water from this 10 gallon, carefully with a siphon so as not to remove any fry. And this time I got quite a few blackworms that were living in the substrate of the 120 gallon. Now, I tried to remove them with a turkey baster, but I carefully examined the jar in which I put them, and of course there was a Colombian Tetra fry among them, so they don't seem to be doing any harm. I'll just let them stay in here for now. It probably is a good thing to have the blackworms rolling around in the detritus, because they can devour leftover brine shrimp. There's going to be plenty of extra brine shrimp from feedings of these Colombian Tetra fry, at least for the first few months, so the blackworms can devour the dead brine shrimp nuclei, and hopefully that will help prevent soiling the water. The 2 Nerite snails that I added to my second potting soil tank are doing fine. There's one of them on the driftwood, and the other. Now, every other day I put a little bit of sinking algae wafer into this corner where I've swept away the gravel. That way it won't get lost in the gravel. But so far, I haven't noticed the snails cleaning the plants of algae at all. Now, I demonstrated in an earlier video that much of this dark stuff appears to be basically dust from the potting soil, and it's stuck to the lower leaves so long that they began to deteriorate. And I believe that it includes some algae as well, so I wish that the snails would get on the leaves and do something about that, but they don't appear to be inclined to. They're always stuck to the glass or traveling across the gravel or the driftwood. At least one of them likes to get on the hang on the back filter, and even in the flow of the water coming from that. I found one on the intake of the hang on the back filter once, so I turned it off thinking you might be stuck there by the suction. Anyway, turned it off and left it off for a while, and he wandered off. So, in spite of a little bit of deterioration in the lower leaves, the water wisteria looks okay, and I'm pretty happy with these Nerite snails. The cherry shrimp in my potting soil tank are doing very well. They're gathering in this corner because I put some sinking food there for them, where I've swept most of the gravel away from this corner so that the food won't be lost in the gravel. And the water wisteria in this tank is doing very well, as is water sprite. Now, the dwarf Sagittaria is covered with some sort of algae. Much of it is, but it's propagating. And the broadleaf Sagittaria there in the center is propagating as well. There's some back in the Java moss, and perhaps here in the foreground, I'm not sure if that's dwarf Sagittaria or broadleafed. It's mixing together nicely. But the Java moss is having some issues with green hair algae. I periodically pull some of it out, but the shrimp are not devouring that. And I believe some sort of algae is, I don't know what kind it is, but growing on that artificial stump that I'm using to hide the heater. And over here, more water wisteria, and this plant that came with the shrimp, I have trimmed it twice and put the clippings into the substrate, and it just keeps growing. So it's easy to propagate that little plant. And this side of the tank, very bushy with water sprite. So overall, very successful shrimp tank.